Taking it. Greetings to all of our social media family, to Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Periscope. We want to say thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, it's Monday night and it's Couch Conversations with the Doctors, where health is true wealth. So we want to just welcome you to come on in, and remember to share these videos and start your own watch parties. No, of course, this informational is just that. It's for informational purposes only, but we want to make sure that we give you a good continuity, teach you how to have a good continuity of care with your healthcare physicians and to share information. The congressman often tells us that truth is wealth, and that's why we're here with you guys on tonight with Couch Conversations with the Doctors. We're going to go around and do our introductions, and we see we have a few people that's coming in late. They had some issues. Hey, Karen, I see Karen is checking in with us. Hey, how are you? Some people had some difficulties getting home in our Chicago weather, and they did call and let us know, but they'll be checking in shortly with us. So just going to go around that table once again and do our introductions. I'm going to start first with my coworker, Douglas Graham, Dr. Douglas Graham.
Good evening, everyone. I'm a retired physician. I worked in the Chicago area for many, many years. Last year, I joined Representative Davis in his office as a congressional fellow. I'm going to try and answer your questions as best I can, and welcome this evening.
Awesome, 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 awesome. Hey, Yolanda Williams, we see you checking in there. Remember to share your page and start your watch parties. To the man who says that I threaten him to be here all the time, but he's an awesome healthcare provider. That's our very own Dr. James Miller. Dr. Miller.
Dr. Miller, we can't hear you.
You're muted, Dr. Miller. Unmute yourself.
Okay, there we go. Good evening, everybody. Glad to that you are aboard with us this evening. And I'm a internal medicine physician, have practiced in the Chicagoland area for more than 40 years. Actually retired from clinical medicine now, and have been involved in community activities in terms of trying to educate and improve healthcare delivery in the community. So we are aboard this evening to try to answer your healthcare questions and help you to make some better choices in terms of your health. So welcome aboard.
Wonderful, wonderful. To that awesome family medicine doctor who is an excellent African beat drum dancer. That's our very own Dr. Maya Green.
Hello, everyone. Hi, my name is Dr. Maya Green. I am a facilitator of community healing. I'm a family medicine doctor, also an HIV specialist in the Chicagoland area. I'm a public health advocate and a person that loves my community. I believe any solution to the problems that ails our community come within the community, and nowhere in history has the answer to the healing of our community come from outside of our community. So true healing is going to be through facilitating the needs and the wants and listening to the community. So excited to be here.
Wonderful. Want to say hey to Doris Wiles. I see my sister friend is here, Melanie Winston, to Audrey J. Cox, and Martha. I see you have checked in with us as well. So thank you guys. Share, and start your watch parties. Our very own Congressman of the Illinois 7th Congressional District, who is a vanguard on healthcare, one who triumphs and makes sure that he makes a difference inside of our district. That's our very own Congressman Danny K. Davis.
Well, thank you very much. And of course, I've had a wonderful, wonderful weekend. We laid to rest on yesterday one of the grand ladies of our community, a woman who has, oh my goodness, I guess they've buried a lot of people, and all of us ultimately will get buried. But Gladys Wallace, who was the owner of the Wallace Funeral Home, passed away last week. And of course, her homegoing services were Saturday, and she was just a magnificent person. She and her husband, I met them back in the 1960s when they were associated with the House of Branch Funeral Home before they started their own. So to her family and friends and all of those people who loved her dearly, we share your sense of loss.
Mm.
In my hand, this is a list of all the places where you can get vaccinated in the 7th district. So Nikki, thanks for putting, this is almost 200 sites
Terrific. Yeah.
that people can go to.
Mm.
They won't be able to say that there was no place to go. I mean, they can go to all kind of places all over the district. I also was fortunate to listen to Dr. Terry Mason's show on yesterday, as I do many Sundays, since I generally can't go to Sunday school that early with the pandemic, and so that becomes my Sunday school substitute. And Dr. Novak was on with him, and Dr. Novak was the person in charge of the clinical trials at the University of Illinois as they went through developing the Moderna vaccine. And so I want to thank them for a very enlightening discussion that suggested the one question that I asked of them was, why was it important that people from different races and different ethnic groups participate in clinical trials? We always say that all blood is red, and it is, and that we're all cut from the same cloth. But there's some little variation in our being. And so if something is developed that works for some groups, it may not work as well for you. And so, yeah, it's been tested, it's been whatever, but you bring a unique perspective to the show. And if you're not in it, it just may not do the same thing. So that to me was just a very exciting discussion. I am excited because this week we're going to be marking up the 100, the $1.9 trillion relief package. This is much of it right here. This is the part of it that will come through the committee that I serve on. And so we'll spend the rest of the week trying to get this ready and trying to agree on it. I'm excited about it because $1.9 trillion is a decent piece of money any way you cut it. That can be used for all of the different things we know that are needed. So thanks for being on as the snow is there, but a little snow ain't never hurt nobody. We've had snow before, much more than this. I never will forget 1979.
Yeah.
When we had the biggest snowstorm that Chicago has ever seen. You couldn't get anywhere.
Mm.
I just drove my car into a snowbank and left it and got out and started walking. So we can survive this little snow.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thanks to everybody for being on.
Great.
Right.
I see we've been joined by two additional. Dr. Terry Mason, if you could introduce yourself really well and make sure that no one has any meat for snacks. Go right ahead.
Dr. Terry Mason retired political and I'm sorry, retired. I said political. I shouldn't have said that. Retired health commissioner and director of the County Department of Public Health and practicing urologist for over 26 years. But I do want to say one thing else to Congressman Davis. Dr. Davis, I remember the snow that I think beat that snow, and that was the snow of 1967, I believe it was, where we had 24 inches of snow. It was a record day. I was on my way to my grammar school to meet with my teacher, and it snowed, big, huge snowflakes. The Dan Ryan looked like a parking lot.
I hope we don't duplicate that.
Wow. I hope we don't either. To Dr. Tony Hampton, the weight loss guru and the man who really wants to be on Iron Chef of America. Because he thinks he's an Iron Chef. Go right ahead, Dr. Tony.
All right, welcome everybody. Always my joy and pleasure to be with you guys to share any type of messages we can. And I don't recall, 1967. I was born a year after that. But I've heard stories.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hampton.
I do have a one-way plane ticket going to California, so it's like it does make you wonder why we're here. But we love our city, we love the code, and we'll get through this. It too shall pass. So.
All right. Well, so I see Harriet Humphrey says yes, 1967. I remember. Audrey Jaycox is saying yep, she remembers. Dolores Wiles is saying all right. Linda Johnson says good evening to everyone. And of course, Dolores Wiles also gives her condolences to the family in the loss of Miss Gladys. You know, our conversation tonight is to make sure that everyone stays healthy. And the congressman shared that we almost have, almost 200 sites where you can go and get the COVID vaccine. And so we have an open window for you here to ask your questions about COVID and the COVID vaccine itself. Anything that you want to kind of clear up, we have your professionals right here. All right, Curtis Jones, I see that you checked in with us as well, talking about 1967. I think Terry Mason has sparked something in someone about that 1967. So why is this COVID vaccine just so important? People are asking about herd immunity. And if people are getting it, why do we still need to have it? We're looking for herd immunity. Can somebody answer that question?
I'll take a start at this, in that this virus spreads when it has some place to live. When you get vaccinated, it's got no home. So it can't grow and can't mutate. The more people are vaccinated, it's kind of like in musical chairs. You take away the chair, that virus can sit in. So the more people get vaccinated, the more people get exposed. Virus can't survive in that environment. It's got no home. So that's the reason why. So the more chairs you take away, the more people get vaccinated, the fewer landing places it has, the fewer chances it has to grow and spread. So that'd be my way of explaining it.
Yeah, I think it's really you really are taking a risk. I think that we get a little overconfident in our ability to survive and thrive and be okay. But the reality is we don't really know how our body's going to react to COVID. When I lost a team member who was only 52 in the building I worked in, and across the street from where I work in another advocate building, we lost another team member who was only in their 50s. You can't predict just because you're 40, 50 or whatever that you're going to be fine. So the real Russian roulette is when you take a chance. I'm going to wait and see how it goes. I'm going to make sure other people I want to see. That's really the biggest gamble you can make, because you put yourself in a position where you are in harm's way when you could have simply gotten a vaccine. So again, when we talked about this a little bit recently with the president of one of our hospitals, we understand the fear. and we understand the systemic racism of our country. But we have to be careful to not let that cloud our current vision. And what we do is we gather data, we talk to the experts, we see what's being done, we have oversight, and that oversight provides a certain level of comfort that there's people that I trust and believe in. And some of the scientists were people of color, by the way, but people we can believe in them and that they have done their due diligence, because we each individually can't do it. Even as a physician, I can read studies, but I can't, necessarily do my due diligence to that level. So you have to have faith in somebody. And what I'm suggesting is that the due diligence that I'm hearing and I've done suggests that it's a less of a gamble to get a vaccine, whereby, I mean, I don't know how many people died in Illinois yesterday, but I think it was in the 60s. And you can't find 60 people in the world who died from a COVID vaccine. You probably can't even find 5, or, it's a very small number, if anybody. And then you have to keep in mind, I remember we talked about, I don't want to keep talking, but I remember we talked about Bell's palsy, and people were like, oh my God, you can get Bell's palsy. So they went back and looked at that data, and they found that the number of people who got Bell's palsy was the number of people that get it in the population in general. So it may have had nothing to do with the vaccine as a whole. So we have to be very careful that we don't allow fear to control our decisions, when those decisions could then cause harm.
Yeah. And I think so last week, Dr. I think Mason, you brought up polio, something about polio, right? And then you brought up the polio vaccine, and then we went on to say the reason why we don't have polio vaccine today. The reason why we don't have polio today is because people get vaccinated against. That's the definition of herd immunity. The herd immunity means when enough people in the population have immunity against something, then it moves on to protect all of us. Or as we say, it takes a village, right? And so, but when we look at what herd immunity is, there's a certain, if enough people, that means each and every one of us that is ready need to move on and be part of this solution. For a lot of herd immunity, that number can be up to 90, sometimes 80, but most of the time 90. So I don't want people to get in the mindset, if you are one of the people that has access to and you're ready for the vaccine, if that's you, I don't want you to get in the mindset that, oh, somebody else will do it because that's what herd immunity is. It's just like everything, bright ideas, genius, critiques of our brothers and sisters. If it pops in your head and you're thinking about it, that's the universe or whatever telling you, step up, mask up, get vaccinated. And that's what herd immunity is. Herd immunity is when enough of us get immunity, the rest of us will be protected.
Yeah, and again, I wanted just to really highlight what Dr. Maya just talked about is, don't wait for herd immunity to occur in terms of your own personal protection. Get the vaccine and become part of the solution, and not really wait to have the issue solved by somebody else, because in the meantime, you may become a victim of the disease. So make certain that if you have an opportunity and your time comes up, go ahead, and it's available to you. Take the vaccine, and the risk of the vaccine is much less than the consequences of getting the disease.
I would also add to that vaccines are not new.
No.
They're not new. We've been doing this for a long, long, long time. There may be a difference in some of the technology today, like there is in the technology. I remember when this thing, the phone didn't exist. And we had to there was only a phone on the wall in the kitchen, and it had a cord, and you couldn't go anywhere because you had to be tethered to that cord. Right. The idea that somebody would even suggest that there'd be a day come. I remember going to the Museum of Science and Industry when the phones of the future was a touch button, phone with buttons on it, no dial, but buttons. And so those were, and then we had a party line. Wasn't the thing about you could get up and get on the phone by yourself. You could pick up the phone and you hear other people talking. And you'd have to wait your turn or ask them to get off the line at some point. And if you had to make a long distance call, you had to go through a special operator. Why am I saying all that? Because times change, technology changes. And to the point that Dr. Mayo made, we don't have, not only do we not have polio, diphtheria, a whooping cough. There's a lot of things. And all of you, your children, if you have children going to schools, particularly in the city of Chicago, your children, by the time they start kindergarten or at least first grade, they've had about 10 vaccinations.
Yeah.
So this is nothing new, and we shouldn't be so afraid about it. Now, y'all know where I'm getting ready to go, because what's in a chicken nugget? Are you as picky or as inquisitive about the nature of the food that you put in your mouth every day? Do you know where it comes from? Do you know what it's made of? Do you know what it's going to do? Do you know anything about inflammation? Do you know what that relationship is to diabetes, obesity, and Dr. Tony Hampton? We can all talk about these things. I am far more worried about our food supply than the vaccine.
I'm gonna say this real quick.
And the rotary dial phone. Okay, go ahead.
I mean, yeah, he's doing too much. Stop showing your age. So I was looking at, I had a patient last week. He said, "I can't do the vaccine, doc, but I need you to fill this Viagra prescription." Now, I'm looking at the side effects, right, of Viagra. Bladder pain, burning, feeling in the chest, cloudy, bloody urine, dizziness, increased urinary frequency, indigestion, pain on urination, stomach upset, tenderness, abnormal vision, anxiety, behavioral change, bleeding in the eye, blurry vision, bone pain, breast enlargement, doc, chest pain again, chills, cold sweats, confusion, convulsions, pale skin, deafness, hearing loss, decreased amount of urine, decreased vision, difficulty concentrating, dizziness, double vision, drowsiness, dry eye. Come on now. He didn't ask me about one of those side effects. That's right. He worried about a vaccine, but he showed me that prescription.
You better preach today, Dr. Hampton.
Dr. Mason, I'm ready for it. If I go wrong, Dr. Mason gonna take.
See, we got all the Dinkins riled up. Dr. Reverend Miller gonna get riled up in a minute.
Well, a black man was very instrumental in the creation of Viagra. As a matter of fact, his father used to be a judge, and he often talked about, and he's very involved in substance abuse and mental health, and he talks about how his son helped to create healthy attitudes for many people throughout America, and it's something that he's very proud of. Mm-hmm. So the internet, as we talk about African American History Month and open heart surgery and Viagra, black doctors.
Well, I know now I have to keep my tissue for Dr. Hampton just as well. Usually that box of tissue is for Dr. Mason because he's going to make tears come out your eyes for crying. But I enjoy hearing loss with Viagra, but he didn't ask me that. Okay.
Well, but what Dr. Hampton said is true for almost any of the medications that we take. They may not have all the same side effects as Dr. Hampton read off, but even regular aspirin has side effects. And the only reason we know that those drugs have side effects is because people took it and got them. And then it was recorded during the time that just before these drugs were launched. And so we're not, even though it may come across comically, we're very serious here. And I'm very serious. And all of the doctors that are on this panel and the congressmen are very serious, And we have to begin to look at these things in a different way. So we've got all these people paying money to come to the United States on these tourist things, and they're getting in addition to their room and board, they're figuring out how to get a shot, and they're paying for it. And it's the same shot that some of us don't want to take for free.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I'm just being honest. And I think that at the end of the day, you make your decision about what you want to do, but realize that your decision has some impact on me. Because if too many people decide like you decide, then we'll never get to the herd immunity that Dr. Mayo talked about. And so it's important that you do this. And many of you, all this craziness that I heard about, all kind of things in the vaccine, I'm not going to even repeat them because I don't want somebody to say that I said it. But these things that's not well founded. And there are many things that people are putting in their mouth today that's probably a lot more harmful, or smoking, or using in other ways, or some of the medications. If you ever looked at talk about medications, Dr. Hampton, any of the chemotherapeutic agents, if you ever looked at what they did or could do, or even radiation therapy, or any of these things, but these all went through a trial period so that those things that Dr. Hampton talked about, they knew that it happened because it happened to people and they wrote it down. Right. That's how they generate side effect profiles. And what side effects this vaccine is going to have over time, we'll use it and we'll learn more about it as we go. But right now, with what's happening to us, we really do need to seriously look at this, not as something that's a hindrance, but something that's a help, given the fact that 60% of the people that died of COVID in Chicago were African American.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I want to just say, one of the other things that Dr. Hampton's patient looked at, he looked at the risk versus the benefit.
Right.
And he wanted that particular benefit bad enough that he was willing to take the risk of all these various side effects.
Right.
So again, this is a situation where the risk is pale compared to the benefit of this vaccine. So we have to take that into consideration.
Well, let me ask this question. I go to a lot of funerals, and I went to 2 Saturday, not only the one that I mentioned, but I went to another one. A friend of mine's mother passed away. She was 104 years old. Princess Clara Awasaki. She was from Nigeria. And it was just a beautiful event in terms of all of her grandchildren and everybody who paid tribute. How long should we want to or expect to live? I mean, there are people who plan things. Mm-hmm. I had an uncle who lived to be 102. And when I would run into him and ask him, I said, "Uncle Dude, how you doing?" He says, "I'm doing fine if Cora would just leave me the hell alone." Cora was his daughter, my cousin. And she pretty much regulated everything that he ate, everything he drank. He had jokingly said he wanted to live to be 100. And she said, "Well, Dad, I'm going to help you live to be 100. And she measured the stuff he ate. I mean, she was just the most precise person I've ever known in my life. But she'd always been that way. When we were kids, she was that way. And he lived to be 102, so I guess he was happy. But how long should we expect to live?
That's an interesting question. I think all of us clinicians recognize that we are in a constant fight against cancer and other things. Cancer is just the best example because you're always making cells with the potential to become cancer cells, right? So we know heart disease is number one. So you want to mitigate that risk for sure. Then you think about other conditions, but you think about, so those are vascular disease, heart attacks and stroke. Then you think about things like cancer. But what you want to think about is how you look at yourself first and say, what's my weak spot? And your weak spot is your genetics. You start with that. So you look at your family and say, well, do I have a relative like the congressman suggested that lived to 100? You kind of, so if you got a lot of relatives living to 100, you got a better shot. But I've learned is that your environment, like your genetics and all these other factors are important, but your environment is what's important. I have plenty of examples of people in my family who live short lives, but if you look at their lifestyle, whether it was smoking, drinking, or just having a risky lifestyle, sleeping around, all of that kind of crazy stuff, those types of lifestyles increase your risk for being harmed. So what you want to do is say, what's my biggest weak spot? Everybody got diabetes, so I need to do everything not to be a diabetic. And that has a lot to do with diet and things like that. And then you say, what else can I do? Well, because the simple answer to your question, Congressman, I think most of us, the life expectancy may be 78 or whatever, but it's really not 78 because, that life expectancy is based on all these young Black men getting killed. That's factored into the life expectancy, right? So in reality, if you take an average 75-year-old and you then say, of all the 75-year-olds in the room, what's their life expectancy? You'll probably end up in the 90s because they've already kind of avoided getting shot. They've avoided the car accidents and all those things that factor into the life expectancy. So my opinion is that most of us should be able to, somewhere between 85 and 100 should be very realistic for almost all of us. But you can't get there if you're doing lifestyle things that will start to decrease your chances of being healthy. Now you have a risk for cancer that you shouldn't have had because you're smoking. So those are the things that we want to do. Control your controllables. Focus on what can you do. Something as simple as sleep. All the studies show that if I just did a tweet on telomeres, and the tweet basically said if you're a negative-minded person, pessimistic, it'll shorten your telomeres, which is essentially a predictor of how long you're going to live. It's like this on your chromosomes. It's like the shoestring. And as your shoestring unravels and gets shorter, your life expectancy is. They can literally measure your telomeres and tell you how long you're going to live. However, another thing that'll help your telomeres, other than not being pessimistic, is getting enough sleep. And people that don't get enough sleep, they tend not to live as long. So what you want to do is learn all the various factors that promote longevity and start doing those various factors. And if you do that, I believe you can make it to 85, 90 or beyond.
Yes, when I answer his question, I think the answer is as long as I can live and have a quality, enjoyable life. That's what I want, as much good life as I can. And when I get to the point that life is a chore and it's poor quality, then I don't desire that part. But I'd like to live as long as I can, have a quality life. So if I'm 100 and have a good quality life, that's great. But if I'm 80 and quality is gone, then it's not much. That's not much living with that. So, and again, I agree with Dr. Hampton is that we have to then do those things that help us to have that quality for a longer period of time, as opposed to, sometimes it seems like people just decide to take things as haphazardly, in the sense that whatever happened, and oftentimes it's not really whatever happened, it is what we do to create things and make things happen that are adverse to us having a good, enjoyable life. I mean, someone getting stoned and getting in a car and driving, that's you're putting yourself at unnecessary risk. We have to really look at those things and look at the things that are going to give us a quality life, because most of us want to have as much quality life as long as we can.
Thank you for saying that, Dr. Miller. and Dr. Hampton. Now, Nikki's short answer to that is in line with what we're seeing with COVID, the disparity, in line with so many other things. Your environment and social determinants of health are major factors in how long you live. So if I were to give some numbers, in Chicago, in Streeterville, the life expectancy is 90 years. Right between, I think Dr. Hampton, you said 80 to 100. The life expectancy in Streeterville is 90 years. 9 miles away in Inglewood. It's so funny. I did not prepare for this question. That's not why I have on my Inglewood branded. Yes, sir. But in Inglewood, the life expectancy of a person is 60 years, 30 years, a gap. For the same, you control all those things. You control all of them. There's a difference in the life expectancy, and that's because of the lack of equity. The inequities are in the social determinants of health. So we can name, or we can call it any disease. We can call it heart disease. We can call it cancer. We can call it anything. We can call it COVID. The life expectancy in our populations that are historically overlooked and underserved is way lower than populations that are in different neighborhoods that are on the north side. That's why that COVID vaccination distribution map looks like that. And those are things, yes, there are things we can control, but those are things that we as community experts and public health people need to come in and step in and control, because all the factors, there's some factors that are not, I can go jogging, I can do all those lovely things that we mentioned, I can cleanse myself and detox and things like that. And I advocate for that because self-care is the best care. When you take care of yourself first, then the rest of the world, you kind of ready for it, or as ready as you can be. But then there's other things, environmental factors that are structurally made that do have an impact on our life expectancy. So 90 years through the 60 years and 30-year gap.
Wow. Well, I want to say thank you to Deborah Williams for checking in. And she also asked the question, what happened in 1967? And I want to thank Martha for educating Deborah on what happened in 1967, sharing with her that, Deborah, it was the snowstorm. Linda Johnson has a great question. But right before I ask Linda Johnson's question, Audrey Jaycox wants you to know that she got her first shot on last week. And Arlene Spencer says, amen, Dr. Mason. Tell it like it is. We've been joined by the great pastor of the People's Church of the Harvest. That's Pastor Michael Eady from the People's Church of the Harvest, Church of God in Christ. Him and his wife have also been vaccinated, and he is encouraging his congregation to get their vaccine just as well. And there's a group of pastors who all got their vaccines, and they're encouraging their congregation. Pastor Eady, would you like to introduce yourself to the public here? And unmute yourself.
Plus, is he old enough to have been vaccinated?
Okay.
Yes, Nikki Harvey, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Okay.
The congressman asked you a question.
Say, I
What
don't
did you
know
say,
what's
Congressman?
happening on my end.
One more time.
Everyone's voices are coming through distorted, and I cannot make out anything that anyone is saying. Maybe I'll go back out and come back in.
Okay. And we'll wait on you. We'll be right here waiting on you to do that. Linda Johnson asked the question, why is the Johnson vaccine only one shot?
So that has a lot to do with how that vaccine was created. The other vaccines ahead of it, the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine, are ones that have an envelope of fat around the delivery piece. Those are the ones that have to be refrigerated at such a low temperature. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine is a more traditional kind of vaccine. It doesn't require those super cold temperatures. So that's why it's got a different delivery system, a different way of doing its job. So that's why the Johnson & Johnson is such a desirable vaccine. You don't need to keep it cool. You might just be able to get by just one vaccination slowly too. Does that answer the question, Nikki?
Oh, I think you've answered it.
Okay.
Does it have the same, close to the same efficiency rate as the others?
Well, it's a great question. But the bottom line is, if you get the Johnson & Johnson, no one who got the Johnson & Johnson died of COVID. Nobody who got the Johnson & Johnson spent time in the intensive care unit. So you still might get COVID, but it might be a very, very mild case. So if there's ever a real selling point for getting the vaccine is, you never know when you're going to get it, but when you get the mild case, as opposed to really serious and bad cases. So that's kind of the other really critical selling point of those vaccines is, it's kind of like when you have car insurance. You don't know when you're going to get in that accident, but when you get in that accident, you surely don't want to have to pay for a brand new car.
That's right.
So
Okay.
You know, Congressman Davis, that one of the other things I heard about I had on the radio show this past weekend the person who was head of the clinical trial for Moderna at the University of Illinois, and one of the things that came up is that if you take the Moderna vaccine and only take one shot, then the efficacy is under 80%. If you just take the one shot, when you take the booster, which is what that is, it now increases that efficiency to over 95%. From what I understand, that's far greater than the ability of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So it has its pluses and minuses. And I think that as we do with everything else, especially on this program, Congressman, is that we want people to know the difference, right, so that you can make an informed decision. Now, it doesn't mean that it won't work for you, because 70% is pretty good. But 90% you might say is better, or 95% is better. So those are the things you need to think about. And the fact that if you did, from what I understand, and I don't know whether or not when they do the EULA, the emergency use authorization for these, because none of these have been approved for just regular general use in the public. These are all still in the experimental stages, because that's what the emergency use authorization does. Now, after a while, it may be, just regular, but right now we're operating under this emergency use authorization because of the pandemic. I suspect that most of them will go on to get regular use as vaccines. But right now, you should just know that, and that doesn't mean it's anything bad or anything. I'm just trying to be as transparent as possible, so people have all of the information based on what we have. We're going to have him back on the show on the fourth Sunday of the month. And so you can ask people who actually were involved in the study, the directors of the study, and we had a great conversation with him. So I just wanted to make people aware of that.
I think Kansas City was functioning at 70% yesterday, and the Buccaneers 95.
That's right. The effectiveness of the flu vaccine, just so you know, is probably 50-60%. Mm-hmm. We get the flu vaccine every year. Think about that. Johnson & Johnson may only be 68 to 70%, but guess what? If you think about that, first of all, that's still pretty good numbers relative to traditional vaccines. But if Johnson & Johnson can get the job done just like AstraZeneca, if they can provide more access to the vaccine without having to be minus 20 degrees Celsius and minus 70 degrees Celsius, that's Pfizer and Moderna. Well, that would be a huge victory, because now we're going to reach more people. And so more than likely, most of the people listening to my voice will probably not have, you're not going to the grocery store and having 3 or 4 options. You're going to have to get the option that's available. We are still struggling to produce these vaccines in mass quantity. So whenever you have an option in front of you, I would just take that option, because you don't know for sure that you're going to have a second option down the road. And again, 70% which is probably Johnson & Johnson, is actually pretty good compared to no protection.
Mhm.
All right, this is awesome. I want to say hey to Shauna Black Ice Jackson, who has checked in with us just as well. And Carrie Steele, Bonnie Schmetley, Jack Lynch, who has also checked in. And I see Pastor E has changed devices because his background is a little different. And I see he's back with us. That's Superintendent Michael Eady, pastor of the People's Church of the Harvest Church of God in Christ, who has actually definition for COVID, which I know he's going to share with us on this evening. But him and his wife actually had the COVID vaccine, and they've actually encouraged a number of other pastors, and they all went together and got the vaccine, and they're encouraging their congregations. Pastor Eden, and I know the congressman had a question for you earlier.
All right. Come on with it. Come on with it, Congressman.
I didn't know if you were old enough to fit the category of people who, have access.
Well, they said everybody's 65 and older, and I passed that 4 years ago. So, yeah. So that was right in my court. Yes, and thank you so very much, Nikki, for inviting me with this very prestigious group here tonight. But yes, I on this past, well, now it was a week ago today, I, along with my wife, we went to Mount Sinai, and we were vaccinated there. It was our first. We will receive our second one in, 3 weeks from this past Monday, which will be February 22nd. And the fact for me is it happened so fast and it was so painless. I didn't know really had they given me the vaccine, but they did. And I have not had much of any reaction to it other than just a little tenderness in my armpit on the side of the arm where I received the vaccine. My wife had a few more challenges where she had pain in her arm that she received the vaccine in, and expressed that her arm felt like a ton of bricks. But other than that, she's doing fine. She took a couple of Tylenols and is doing good. And the reason that we did it is that we wanted to serve as an example. First of all, certainly to our congregants, and then to the broader community, but also to pastors at large, because all of us, I'm saying choir, we've all heard of the many things that would cause us all to be skeptical, especially in the African American community. And I must say, initially, I was resistant to it. But then as I became to be more educated around it, I have to attribute Dr. Horace Smith. He kind of helped me to better understand about it. In fact, he was pushing hard about many from the African American community participating in the trials. And for me, initially, that was a little hard going down. But as I came to better understand, I was even willing to participate because of I viewed it as a service to our community. So I think that is just a great thing. But and maybe, I don't know, Nikki, if I can pose a question that maybe one of the doctors here might be able to answer, certainly the congressman. And the question for me is, with what I've also been given to understand, certainly as we are encouraging members from the Black community to take the vaccine is coming to be more unavailable. And then I've even heard or come to understand that Illinois is experiencing a slower rate of receiving it than other states. So I don't know. Is there something that must be done, or something we have failed to do in this area, or what? Can someone help me?
Well, you know, the vaccine is being paid for pretty much with taxpayers' money. And of course, there has to be authorization to do that. This week, we are marking up the $1.9 trillion relief package that we expect to have in place by maybe sometimes next week. And so we should have the resources available to keep the flow of the vaccine coming. So I think that's pretty much where we are. There have been shortages. There are places that have run out. There are places that don't have enough. We've had teachers, for example, who have said they're not going back into the classrooms unless they are vaccinated beforehand. And I think we're going to have much of that worked out rather than looking backwards in terms of what the former administration did not do. We're really looking forward in anticipation of what this new administration is going to do and is in fact doing. And so I expect that we're going to have the supply of vaccine that we need.
Thank you, Congressman.
Go ahead.
The other thing we have to do that we're saying, because within the city, if you look at the vaccine distribution within the city of Chicago, once that vaccine hits Chicago, the distribution is the distribution. You know, but there are reasons why the distribution looks like that, right? Things like the opportunity to communicate vaccine access to certain populations and the ways we communicate it. There was a New York Times article that showed if we post a link to certain websites, Board of Health, our own healthcare institution, things like that, and we say, oh, here's a link to sign up, that link is going to drive traffic towards historically white communities. If we say, call in and get scheduled, that method is going to drive traffic towards historically white and more wealthy population. Now, if we have a link, not to say we shouldn't have a link or we shouldn't call in, we have to know that we're all born into a system that for years had some implicit bias and inequity built into it, the system that we're all born into. So that's not a moment to blame or shame, or that this is a system we're built into. If we're going to get real about dealing with it, then if you're born into systemic inequity, you have to build equity in every area: education, health, somebody's the way they love, the way they live. You have to build equity in every area, in every pocket. So what that means is, if you're going to have a link, just make sure you distribute it to the targeted communities first. Which means don't just say, oh, here's a link, because the minute you take that link out, you don't know where it's going. We have to call and say, hey, like they did you, hey, the vaccine is ready. Do you want it, or do you have questions? Should we talk about it? And if you're ready, we register you, rather than just sending out a link on Facebook or into the ether. Because the studies show, article in New York Times, that doesn't work for our population. So we have to be intentional about the way we want to move with equity. We have to have equity just at the table when you make the ideas and great things. But we need, where I come from, people you call foot soldiers that's going to get on the ground and do what needs to be done.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that understanding.
The other thing that we're also doing is we're looking at working in partnership with some major technology technology companies like Google. There's a group of us that are looking at what is the way, because Google knows how people get information, and they've got it cut 1,000 different ways, because everybody, one way or the other, comes back through Google for something. And therefore, we should take these analytics and then use these analytics and also use the appropriate kind of languaging that Dr. Maya talked about in a targeted sort of way. And so the other thing is that came up when Walmart came into the distribution channel. People wanted to come with families. And unfortunately, in many cases, they followed the guidelines. So even if a grandchild came with their grandparent and the grandchild was an adult, they would not vaccinate the grandchild because the grandchild wasn't 65 or older. So there are a number of issues, and I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm just trying to say this is what it is. But I think that what we're doing is really trying to say, okay, we understand our communities. Let us interact with the pastors. Let us interact with the appropriate people within our community and others that we may not yet know who are influencers, so that we can do exactly, Pastor Edie, what you just talked about, and making sure that it's language and distributed. And of course, Congressman Davis, having the supply will make all the difference in the world once we get these other things taken care of.
Thank you.
Well, Pastor Edie, I know you had your standing church meeting at 8 p.m., so we want to thank you for being here, but did you share your new meaning to COVID with us?
My what now?
Your new meaning for the word COVID.
Oh, wow, man, I have a number of them. You shouldn't ask a preacher those kind of things, I did a whole series on redefine COVID, and we've been doing that, but I'll just give you a couple of them. One of them is crossing over valiantly into destiny. The second one is Christ offers victory in disaster. Another one is courage optimizes vision-inspired dreams. And I'll just level off with this one. And this is something I say to myself: conceive one virtuous idea daily.
Wow.
So, you got to turn COVID into something else. Oh my God, you got to preach a started, Reverend.
Yeah, I'm waiting for you to take your text, Rev.
Oh, yes, sir. Well, the text was redefine COVID. I wanted to let people know not to allow 2020 to bog them down, redefine it in 2021 and press on going forward. In fact, Amen. I have really around 21 of them, but I can't think of the time.
Amen, Reverend.
Amen. 19 for COVID-19. I thought that's what you had. But as we always say, it's that time, and we usually remind everyone to give us their thoughts for the evening and our until next Monday. So I think all of Pastor Edie's until next Mondays were great. But I definitely love that second one. What was it? Christ
offers victory in disaster.
And that victory is to get that vaccine.
That's right.
That victory is to get that vaccine.
Now, you know what? I'm going to make sure I'm going to create one with vaccine in it. I'm going to go back to the drawing board.
All right, Pastor Edie. Dr. Douglas Graham, what's your until next Monday?
Well, I did watch the Super Bowl, and I was thinking about comebacks. A lot of the questions today have been about vaccine and access to vaccine and when we're going to get it. I'm just reminded a lot of football games, you're behind in the first half and you come back and win in the second half. Our country was put behind in the first half by the way that the COVID pandemic has been handled. We got a second half to go, so we can win this one. That's all I can say.
Right. That's our comeback. Okay. Dr. James Miller, until next Monday.
Until next Monday, I just want most of our community to remember that this is Black History Month. And during Black History Month, we celebrate the lives of our heroes. And what I want to say until next Monday is that let us take a heroic step and step up to do what we can to protect ourselves and to protect our community by taking the vaccine.
Okay. Dr. Maya Green, until next Monday.
Until next Monday, I'd like to think about what the response to Reverend Edie was. He asked what we're doing. The congressman mentioned they're on their end. We're a team, just like the game yesterday. They're on their end, making sure we get the vaccine. Once they hand it off to us, we have to do our part in communicating to the communities that need it to come in and be the foot soldiers and get it. But then Dr. Mason came in on the other end and said, hey, if you have a chance, you bring everybody you can until we get rid of, until we adjust ourselves and get rid of, because it happens in every pandemic. It happened in polio. They're going to realize there's going to be a point we're going to realize we need to vaccinate everybody, just like Dr. Mason said, versus turning people away. And once we get there, and until we get there, you bring everybody in to get vaccinated. It's a team effort.
All right, Dr. Terry Mason, until next Monday.
Until next Monday, stay informed, stay safe, and stay ever vigilant about doing all you can to protect you and your family by taking advantage of this vaccine.
All right. Dr. Tony Hanson, until next Monday.
I love what Pastor Edie suggested. He suggested that we have been given a gift from high. And the gift is that for the first time in our history, we have a vaccine that was created in 6 months or so. We've been given a gift of a vaccine that's as effective as any vaccine ever created by man. So when you see a blessing, don't miss it. Sometimes you get a blessing and you're saying, God's gonna take care of me. Well, I think he just did. So listen what the pastor said, and don't believe those myths. Those myths that there's some extra stuff in that vaccine. We've already shared in previous episodes, there is no extra stuff. It's going to cause a reaction. Well, only 1 in 100,000 people have a reaction to the vaccine, and none of those people have died because we know what to give them when they have a reaction. So it's going to affect my genes. Well, messenger RNA is going to disappear as fast as you put it in the body, so it's not going to affect your genes. So what we have to do is we have to let go of fear. And I've said before that fear is false evidence appearing real. We have to stop this fear of things that are really not true. And hopefully, as you've listened to us here and other resources that are reliable, you've learned to stop fearing something that you should be thanking God for. Because the doctors in our health system cried, some of them, when they got the vaccine. I want to see some more tears, some tears of happiness, some tears of thanking God for the gift of this vaccine. So the pastor blessed us tonight with the understanding to receive your blessings when they come your way.
There you go. That's it.
Awesome. Congressman?
Well, Reverend Edie kind of is an inspiration. Many of us who are involved in communication kinds of activity say nobody can tell it like a Black preacher. So you leave it to the Black preacher. Faith is a big part of what is needed in order to handle the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I remember one piece about faith. It says if you would have the faith of a mustard seed and say to yonder mountain, be moved, that the mountain will get out of the way. And of course, if it does not, then you get you some TNT, some nitroglycerin, get a hammer, chisel, whatever you need to do to make it work.
That's it.
I just in for next week. I think of one of my favorite poets, woman named Helen Steiner Rice, who talked about faith a lot. And one of the things that she said is that often your task will be many and more than you think you can do. But start out today with faith in your heart and climb till your dreams come true. Often the roads will be rugged and the hills unsurmountable too. But faith is a mover of mountains. There's nothing that God cannot do. So start out today with faith in your heart and climb till your dreams come true. If we would have the faith, the belief, and do the work that has to be done, I do believe that we will begin to see a decline in the numbers of people who have concerns that are causing them to be reluctant. I think it's already beginning to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that a people so deprived sometimes ought not be expected to race with the wind. That's something that W.B. Du Bois said one time. When a reporter asked him, says, Dr. Du Bois, I've been going to you folks' meetings all the time, and you just whine and you cry and you moan and groan and talk about disparities and talk about being mistreated, talk about why you don't get the same treatment as others. She said, will Black people ever reach the point where you become a part of mainstream America? And he said he started dancing, then he thought for a minute and he said to her, my darling, a people so deprived ought not be expected to race with the wind. Sometimes when you evaluate, you have to look at the depth from which one comes, as opposed to only the height to which they have not ascended. And so I say, if we look at the depths from which we have come, then we understand some of the reluctance. Then we understand some of the trepidation. Then we understand some of the reasons why. But if you've got faith, the mountain will be moved. So we shall move the mountain. Thank you all so much for being a part of this evening of activity. And that mountain is going to get out of the way.
Amen.
All right. Let's move some mountains. Remember to join us right here next Monday night, same bat time, same bat channel. Couch Conversations with the Doctors, where true health is wealth. And remember to mask up and step up. Slay, as Dr. Maya says, when you go to get your vaccine, as she dressed all up in her fabulous dress and had her fascinator on her head when she went to get her vaccine. So slay. Oh, and remember to always wash your hands very good, at least 20 seconds. Remember to social distance. Stretch those arms out, and if you're touching someone or someone is touching you, simply ask them to move over just a little bit. We are so close to having our freedom once again. And remember to wear your face coverings over your nose and mouth. Get that face covering over your nose and mouth Those droplets are what's important. They're the dangerous people. The life you save may be your own. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next Monday.
All right, bye-bye, guys.
All right. That was my Sunday mask I had showing.
Oh, okay.